Greetings, I am Mr. Grimreaper 512 and welcome to another edition of Rip from the Silverscreen. Tonight, we are going to go back to 1984, one of the greatest horror films ever made by a master of horror, Wes Craven. This is the very first Nightmare on Elm Street. I am Mr. Grimreaper 512, by the way. This is Dark Knight 97, and we're gonna go through the plot as always, and we're gonna talk about the film that. Well, we're gonna talk about the film that some of these films in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, people didn't like all that much, but they loved the very first film. And we're gonna talk about that, and I'll probably go down the line later on as we because I talked a little bit about this movie yesterday during the Freddy vs. Jason review that I made yesterday, but we're gonna go down the line here and talk about our thoughts on the very first Nightmare on Elm Street from Wes Craven. Rest in peace, by the way. Okay, so as you know the plot, these teenagers are trying to stop this horrifying entity that is running around in their heads.
And their nightmares.
Yeah, and their nightmares and stuff like that. And the funny thing about this is that the funny thing about this movie is that basically Wes Craven, of course, if y'all guys haven't seen I'm trying to think if there was like a legacy, a Nightmare Legacy or something like that, I don't know, where Wes talked about how he had inspiration from this. Now, according to Wes Craven, he was inspired by this from seeing a newspaper article in the 70s about a Southeast Asian refugees who would go to sleep at night and they would not wake up, and and nobody could explain the death rate of these Asian refugees and stuff like that. So it was kind of sort of like a big thing that happened with that situation. And then he also said that he got himself one night that when he was a kid, he saw a man. He saw a man outside his window, and it scared the piss out of him. So that's kind of sort of basically how this whole thing, his inspiration for Freddy Krueger began.
That's right.
So basically the film. So this was another one. Another film that nobody wanted to make. We were talking about this. We were talking about the same thing with Sam Raimi in the Evil Dead series. But they did not want. He went to studio to get this made, to get the film made. The first Nightmare, and then he comes across this brand new studio that was just being made called New Line Cinema, who a few years back, I believe they would later shut their doors, and then I guess Warner Brothers would end up buying them out or something like that.
Yeah.
And things started changing with that. So yeah, basically what happened is that he had to go. Like I said, he had to go to studio trying to make this film possible. He only had a couple. He only had a couple $100 in his pocket, trying to get out there, trying to make a name for himself. In comes Robert Englund. Now Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger, was on like different before doing before doing the first Nightmare. He was on different. He played in different TV shows back then at that time, and stuff like that. So, which would, and then in 1984, they would create one of the most horrifying, terrifying films in the history of cinema.
Yes.
This film, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's right.
So we're gonna go through the plot here, and we're gonna talk about different things of how this whole thing came to be. Okay, so Tina Gray awakens from a nightmare wherein she is attacked by a disfigured man wearing a blade-fixed glove, and her mother points out 4 mysterious slashes on her nightgown. The following morning, she is consoled by her best friend Nancy Thompson and Nancy's boyfriend Glenn. The two stay at Tina's house following her mother going out of town, but their sleepover is interrupted by Tina's boyfriend, Rod. When Tina falls asleep, she is chased by the man. Rod awakens to Tina's thrashing and witnessing her being dragged and fatally slashed by an unseen force. He flees as Nancy and Glenn awaken to find a bloody Tina dead. Okay, let's talk about that right now. Okay. I want to share with you how that was made. Okay, so apparently their idea was of how she was going to start of how that was going to happen was that they put they made a stage out of this hamster, I believe it's like a hamster wheel or some shit like that. And I think people started puking or something like that or whatever. I don't know the whole story. I really don't know the whole story of how.
Me neither.
But it was like on a hamster wheel, and they kept having to spin it to make it look like she was going on the ceiling,
right? And
stuff like that. And oh my god, that part is so terrifying.
It is.
To wake up and your girlfriend or whatever is up in the literally going up in the air and by an unseen force, and you see blood. You see tons and tons and tons of blood. But yeah. Okay, so Rod is arrested. I don't know why the dude didn't do it. By Don Thompson. I think Don was an asshole. Anyway. Okay, despite his pleas of innocence, at school, Nancy falls asleep in class, and the man calling himself Freddy Krueger chases her to the boiler room. When cornered, she burns her arm on a pipe and awakens, where she notices the burn mark on her arm. At home, Nancy falls asleep in the bathtub and is nearly drowned by Freddy. She goes to Rod at the police station, who tells her about what happened to Tina, and Nancy believes that Freddy is responsible for Tina's death. Okay, that bathtub scene. Okay, so he raises his I guess Freddy had to. I guess Robert. What happened was that Robert had to be. They had. It was like on a soundstage or something like that. How they did it was that he had to literally be under the bathtub to raise his arm and stuff like that. And
right.
I thought that was pretty cool.
It was.
Let's see. Nancy invites Glenn to watch over her as she sleeps. She sees Freddy preparing to kill Rod in his cell, but then turns his attention towards her. She runs away and wakes up when her alarm clock goes off. Freddy kills Rob when he wraps the bed sheets around his neck as a noose. So they did so in this one they did the same thing they did with the trees. They made it like in reverse. It was like they made it yeah. So okay, so let me see. Nancy and Glenn go to the cell to find his body hanging. At Rod's funeral, Nancy's parents become more worried when she describes Freddy in her dreams. Her mother Marge takes her to a dream clinic where she manages to grab Freddy's hat and pull it from the dream into her possession. Marge begins to drink heavily and bars the windows at home. She tells Nancy that Freddy was a child murderer released on a technicality and the parents burn him alive in a form of vigilante justice. Nancy realizes that Freddy desires revenge and she calls Glenn to warn him. But his parents prevent her from speaking to him. Glenn falls asleep and is killed by Freddy. That part when Johnny Depp
oh god, that was
Johnny Depp gets pulled into the bed and then gallons and gallons of blood fucking sprays all over the room. Oh my god, that shit was fucking...
Dude, that scared the hell out of me too.
Yes,
seriously.
yes. Okay, so let me see here. Alright, okay. Now alone, Nancy puts Marge to sleep and asks Don, who is across the street investigating Glenn's death, to break into the house in 20 minutes. She rigs booby traps around the house and grabs Freddy out of the dream and into the real world. After Freddy suffers from the trap, she lights him on fire and locks him in the basement before rushing to the door for help. As the police arrive to find Freddy has escaped from the basement. Nancy and Dawn go upstairs to see a burning Freddy smothering Marge in their bedroom. After Dawn puts on the fire, Freddy and Marge vanish into the bed. Dawn leaves the room. Freddy rises from the bed behind Nancy. When she realizes that he is powered by his victim's fear, Nancy calmly turns her back on him and evaporates when he attempts to lunge at her, defeating him. Nancy steps outside into a bright morning where all of her friends and mother are still alive. She gets into Glenn's car to go to school, where the top comes down and suddenly locks them in. The car begins to drive uncontrollably down the street as two girls playing jump rope are seen chanting Freddy's nursery rhyme. This ending sucked. This ending really sucked. I don't know what Lin Shaye. I don't know what I forget what his name was. The guy that Robert Shaye. Okay, so apparently Wes wanted the ending to be different, but Shaye didn't want to hear nothing about it. So that was the kind of sort of the argument that they had about the ending. Even Wes Craven said he hated that ending when Marge is pulled in because it looks like a goddamn doll getting pulled into the window. You know what I mean? And Wes wanted to have a different ending to this film, but that wasn't the way to be. But that's the only thing that hurt the movie a little bit, was the ending. I kind of sort of wanted to see what Wes's ending would have been and stuff like that. But overall, what did you think of the film, man, when you watched it?
Well, I thought the film, like I said, to me, I thought it was a good movie because this is what launched Bob Langland to be the most memorable character to many horror fans as Freddy Krueger. This is, now, I want to go back and talk about the whole, when she's on the ceiling thrashing.
Yeah.
Now, if those of you who may have this, those of you who have this DVD or not, but if you have this, if you watch the Boogeyman Kill compilation DVD, if you turn on the commentary, it's Robert Englund, and he's discussing the scene that's shown in there is the scene where she's thrashing on the ceiling and everything like that. And if you turn on the commentary, Robert Englund says, what my partner told you was, what you're seeing, it looked like she's on the ceiling thrashing, but what that really is the floor.
Yeah.
And so he talks about that effect. And then beforehand, in the dream, when you see the girl run to Freddy in an alley where he has these long arms,
yeah,
those are actually being held up by fishing lines. So he actually talks about those. That's a little Easter egg for those of you who may not know about that or have the DVD and may not know.
Oh yeah, I forgot I forgot to mention that there is a scene where he has like very long arms and stuff like that. And what Wes Craven said is that they had to get two guys on two separate buildings, I believe.
That's right.
They had fishing lures to literally carry. And I'm pretty sure he was having a hard time. I'm pretty sure Robert was having a hard time trying to keep his arms up. During the making of this film.
Exactly. So that's basically what he talks about during that scene in the Boogeyman compilation. So check that out if you guys don't know about that. But anyway, so yeah, basically the effects, like my partner was talking about, where she's on this thing, that was really the floor, and they were like dragging her around to make it look like she was thrashing and stuff like that. So that's how that was done. So anyway, but yeah, this movie was what started a great series of this film, and like I said before, it launched Robert Englund's career because Robert Englund is a legend because of his time known as Freddy Krueger. Now I admit this movie did scare me a lot. You know, I remember back when I was a kid, I know my cousins and my family would watch this film. I never watched it, but I know that because back then I was a kid, I was scared of movies like that. But now that I watch it, and of course now that my brother gave me a copy, now that I watched it, you know, when I got looking back on it, like I said, this was just the beginning of how Robert Englund came to be and how legendary he came to be, known as Freddy Krueger. And now and again, I go to YouTube and I see Robert Englund talking about his experience about that. And now and again, dude, he still has it. You know, for the fans, sometimes he let out a pretty cool like
Yeah.
Still do that. Sometimes he even put on the glove, you know. And I remember my older brother used to have the glove for a Halloween costume. I remember. Anyway, so he put on the glove. He enjoys that. That's what made him famous was this movie here. So this movie was by far the greatest movie. It really does give you the scares it needs. And yeah, so this is what made Robert Englund notable. So I enjoyed this movie. As scary as it was a good movie. As scary as it was, as the scares were made you jump out of your skin, this movie was it. And again, they launched a whole good series, and we'll talk about these and the other films later on down the line. But this was the beginning of what would be known as the Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie here. If it wasn't for this movie, there wouldn't be no part 2, 3, 4, 5. This movie here was the beginning of what was known as the Nightmare on Elm Street, the series. If it wasn't for this film right here, so I think this film was a great film. Yeah.
Yeah, and what we're going to do too is we are going to talk about the remake.
Yes.
I got a lot to say about that goddamn remake.
Oh, do I?
Because that remake was the catalyst that ruined this legacy. That ruined the legacy of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Even though I give Jackie Earle Haley the benefit of the doubt, they tried whatever they could to make that remake good, but nothing is better. The 1984 version was better from all points of the imagination. The 1984 film was hell of a lot better than that goddamn remake that came out years ago, back in 2009, I believe it came out, 2010 or 2009.
I believe it was.
And
you can't have a Nightmare on Elm Street without Robert Englund. You can't have a Nightmare on Elm Street without the Freddy Krueger, which is Robert Englund.
Yeah.
That's it.
That movie felt so flat. That movie felt flat, and I got a lot of shit to get off my chest about that goddamn remake from 2009. Yeah. And, but as far as everything else goes, I give this movie, even though there was arguments back and forth during the making of this between Robert Shea and Wes Craven, and Wes Craven wanted to have had a vision of what he wanted. Robert Che had a vision of what he wanted. But even still, this movie began a legacy which people would still talk about today. People still talk about the bed scene, the bed scene where Johnny Depp gets pulled by Freddy Krueger into the bed, and blood splatters everywhere, all over the room and stuff like that. And people still talk about this movie. There are fans talk about this still. Me and Dark Knight are one of them. But even still, I believe that this film deserves a 10 out of 10. Completely. This film began Wes Craven, God rest his soul, began a legacy that would be without Robert Englund and Wes Craven, there would have been no Nightmare on Elm Street at all. This movie launched a catalyst of films, some good, some bad, which would make the biggest horror film legacy in the history of cinema. And I give Robert Englund and I give Wes Craven a lot of credit for what they did. I also give the people that the dudes, everyone who worked their ass off in this first film. I give New Line Cinema the benefit of the doubt too, as well, for everything that they went through in this film. It was a good film, and I enjoyed it a lot. What is your take on the legacy of Freddy Krueger, man?
Well, I mean, everything you're saying there, but I agree on the money. I mean, yeah, you can't have a Nightmare on Elm Street with, like I said, when we're talking about the remake, but you can't. No offense to Daryl Haley, like I said, he did good in that remake, but to me, in my opinion, and I'm going to agree here that you can't really have a Nightmare on Elm Street without the Freddy Krueger, without Nealon, and that's this movie, like I said, it started what it was a series of movies that made a lot of great money at the box office, a lot of sequels, and like I said, it made Robert Englund who he was. And but this is our opinion. Robert Englund is a legend because of this. Without Wes Craven and without Robert Englund, dude, Nightmare on Elm Street would have never came to pass.
No, it wouldn't.
So 10 out of 10 is what I give it to, because this movie, it was a good movie. I mean, this was the beginning of the scary movies, and for me, that's how I got to accustomed to Freddy Krueger. That's how I got to know all about Jason, the Friday the 13th, Michael Myers, and Halloween. That was like one of the starting times for scary movies. So Nightmare on Elm Street was just that, and so that's how I became a fan of this. And Robert Englund is a legend, and he'll forever be remembered as the original Freddy Krueger, because that's what he was, and that's from an actor who came to becoming a horror icon in the horror industry. That's a big step for him.
Oh, you damn right it is. You damn right it is. It's a very big step for before Nightmare on Elm Street. You never even heard the name Robert Englund.
No.
You never even heard the name Wes Craven. You have heard of the name Wes Craven before because he made a ton of other movies before this. But this one launched him into superstardom. This film launched both of them into superstardom with the way the film was shot, the way the film was edited, the way the cast was in this film. This launched them to great lengths. And Wes Craven would later on make more movies. One of them we're going to talk about later on down the line, the Scream series. We're going to talk about that later on. As we move on through October and the 31 Days of Horror and stuff like that. So let us know what Nightmare film did you guys like the most? Did you like this one? Did you like Dream Warriors? Did you think New Nightmare was good? Let us know in the comments down below and all that. That's gonna be it for me. I'm Mr. Grimreaper 2 with Dark Knight 987. And we will see you all in the afterlife. Peace out.